Part 2, Chapter 6. I'm so looking forward to a few days off, Faith mused, weaving between the aisles at Home Goods, one of her favorite stores. Sure, there was Williams Sonoma, Kitchen Virtue, or the Food Network shops, but Faith found the best gems on the racks and shelves at Home Goods. The kitchen closes tomorrow, and we don't open up again until New Year's Eve. I hear you. She glanced over her shoulder to cut her eyes at me. "Okay," says she, who has been off work for a week already. I knew I should have been a teacher. You get all kinds of vacation. I need all kinds of vacation. Those kids are two full-time jobs at the at-risk qualifier, and I don't even know why you're complaining about me getting time off. I don't want to see those beautiful brown faces until January 3rd, the very earliest. I guess, she said, sighing. Then can I be jealous about your post-Christmas plans, at least? I mean, she reached for a ceramic tea kettle and tipped it up to peer at the price tag. She grimaced and set it back down. Jamaica? Isn't Will laying it on a little thick? You know what this is? Payback. You've been married for what, 13 years now? Do you know how many stories I've had to listen to about your happily ever after? Dozens. Dozens, I say. You just settle down over there, old married lady, and listen to my happy stories. Well, not so quietly. I'm happy that you have happy stories, especially at this time of year. It's so nice to see you smiling and out and about, your place all decorated again. Tell your stories, girl. Don't let the fact that Anthony has never surprised me with a trip to Jamaica over the holidays deter you from bragging your face off, okay? How come you don't sound committed to that statement? Because I'm not. I'm salty as hell. Tell Will to tell Anthony the honeymoon ain't over in the Thomas household. He can still woo me. I can still be impressed. Faith waved a hand over the hodgepodge collection of cookware and utensils and frowned. There's nothing here I can't live without. Let's go get some hot chocolate and a cookie. You can help me finalize Christmas dinner. Faith and I left the store and headed to her small SUV parked a few stops from the door. As we climbed into the vehicle, I uttered a quiet admission. I'm a little nervous about this trip to Jamaica. I mean, I told him I wanted to go because it was the last trip my parents took before. I swallowed the lump trying to form in my throat. Nearly 6 years, and I still couldn't talk about my parents. I was working through it, though. I'd finally started seeing a therapist in an attempt to take my life back from the tragic accident that took them from this world. It's not the same resort, is it? No, no, not the same resort. I shook my head. But it's still, I don't know. Is it creepy to want to go there, to repeat the last vacation they took, to want to see the spot where they sat and took that picture? Not creepy, no, but do you think you'll find something there, some kind of meaning or closure? You'll probably be disappointed if you're expecting a big emotional moment. I don't know what I think, Faith. I just know that I feel like I need to go. Then you should go. And if someone thinks that's creepy, well, she shrugged a shoulder, then pressed the ignition button. The vehicle rumbled to life. They don't have to live your life, do they? No, I mused. I suppose they didn't. And, as of late, my life had been pretty damned good, and I wanted to live it myself. I'd met Will on Christmas Day the year before at Faith's house. Her husband had invited her, my old college flame, to dinner, and despite my plans to sack out on the couch watching Christmas movies and drinking spiked cocoa, Faith lured me to her house. Dinner was an actual nightmare. After I decided to leave Will, sweet, sweet Will ran after me to apologize for him and somehow talked me into escaping the situation. We ended up at a little Italian restaurant where we talked and had coffee and dessert, and where I had decided to take the leap towards healing and let someone climb over that fortified brick wall I had built around my heart. Please promise me that you and Will aren't going to disappear halfway through dinner this year. I laughed heartily before I took a sip of my salted caramel latte. I make no promises, especially since you let your husband invite Jay again. Faith sighed loudly and rolled her eyes before dropping them to the notepad sitting in front of her. She had listed what she planned to cook for Christmas dinner and was trying to cobble a shopping list out of the menu. I told Anthony that if we have a repeat of last year, that I will send him and Jay somewhere by themselves. Hell, if I let him ruin dinner 2 years in a row, not when I'm making my prime rib with horseradish cream. The only reason he is coming this year is to apologize for last year. Yeah, well, I've had my share of spending time with him. His AA journey has been inspiring, and I'm happy he and his wife have reconciled. He is still the same insufferable buffoon from college. I don't even know what I saw in him. So it's not still weird dating your college love's younger brother? He's not my college love. He's a guy I dated, and no, it's not weird. Will is nothing like Jay. That's what I love about him. I grinned, knowing I was beaming from my wide forehead to the tips of my toes, but it was okay. I was crazy in love, and it felt good. Speaking of Will, I noted, checking my watch. He's probably in the kitchen. It's his night to make dinner, and I like to help. Faith nodded, tipping back the red paper cup to sip the last of her hot chocolate. I'd better head home, too. Anthony has had the girls all day. I can only hope he hasn't burnt the house down trying to make pizza. Better not. I want my prime rib with horseradish cream. Chapter 7. Honey, I'm home. I unlocked the door and swept inside the condo, dropping my purse on the table in the entryway and pulling my jacket from my shoulders. It has started to rain. I made it home in time to save my fresh Dominican blowout. I heard a sharp bark, then saw a streak of white careening around the corner, paws sliding on the wood floors. She was in such a hurry. Hi, Pumpkin. I reached down to pick up Coco, laughing at her body wriggling in my arms and the soft sandpaper scrub of her tongue against my cheek. You're exactly who I hoped would come running when I said, Honey, I'm home. Where's Will, huh, girl? Kitchen, he called, though I could have figured that. Will loved to cook and savored the nights when it was his turn. Between him and Faith, I had worked in an extra Zumba workout because hell if I was ever missing a meal. At the mention of his name, he poked his head around the corner and smiled. I'm elbow deep up a chicken's ass, or I'd run down the hall and lick your face too. Just one thing licking my face is enough. Let me wash up and take off my shoes, and I'll be right in. Take your time, he said, heading back to the kitchen. I hung her right into the bedroom, dumping Coco on the bed where she curled up in her usual spot on Will's pillow. We had been dating about 6 months when we decided to go for it and move him and Coco to my place. Will didn't want to renew his apartment lease, and I owned a place, so although it seemed early, things had worked out perfectly. They fit right in like they'd always been there, and I hardly remembered what life was like before Will. And, of course, Coco. I slipped into the bathroom to wash my face, take off my jewelry, and pull my hair back behind a thick headband, then change out of my comfortable jeans and blouse into even more comfortable leggings and a long Albany State t shirt. I left the bedroom and headed down the hall where I could either go into the kitchen or to the living room. I chose the living room just to look at the tree. I adjusted the stockings hanging from the fireplace. There was even one for the dog. My eyes floated over the collection of holiday cards that we'd received from friends and family, including Faith and Anthony and Jay and Celeste, who were making a tenuous effort at reconciliation. My heart warmed at the festive trinkets that Will and I had picked out together, and the sprinkles of holiday cheer that I hadn't thought twice about setting out, filling the space. Behind me, ice clinked into a glass, and I heard the familiar sounds of Will mixing a drink. I reached behind the tree to flip the switch to turn on the lights. The small pearl bulbs on the tree, the multicolored lights around the windows in the living room, and the two beaded angels at either of the fireplace. Those were my parents, watching over me. How was Faith? Will asked, handing me a glass. I took it, sipping a little of the amaretto sour that he had perfected to my taste. Ready for vacation so she can hang out in her own kitchen. And she's mad at you. Me? Will dropped onto the couch, lifting his feet up onto the ottoman, as was his habit. He set his drink on a coaster on the table in front of him and patted the cushion next to him. I did, curling my body into him. Why's Faith mad at me? Because you haven't talked Anthony into taking her to an island for the holidays, so she's mad at you. Will laughed. I liked hearing the sound through his chest and my ears. I don't have anything to do with the Thomas household. Anthony's got to work that out for himself. Did y'all talk about the menu for Christmas? Mm-hmm. She's making her famous prime rib with the horseradish cream, he said, wistful. I practically heard him lick his lips. Yep, her tradition, plus the usual sides, potatoes, something green, homemade rolls, and that macaroni and cheese you liked last year. She said to tell you she's using smoked Gouda this year. I am already hungry for Christmas dinner, but I liked something else better than the macaroni and cheese. He closed his arms around me, making sure that a hand traveled a wide swath across my thigh to my backside. You flirt, I told him, giggling. Only for you. You're a little bit older than me, you know. You might decide to find an old man to go be with. 3.5 years is nothing. Besides, I've been with an old man. Your grandmother is right. A new broom does sweep well. So well. I feel like that's a dig against my brother, and since we're still deep into sibling rivalry, I'll consider that a win. We just won't tell him. That wouldn't be awkward at all. I gulped down a swallow from my glass before setting it on a coaster. But he'd need to unpack that in therapy and then wax on about it at every opportunity. He's making good progress, though. Let's not make too much fun. You're right. I'm in therapy too, so I shouldn't joke about it. But I don't put everyone through the experience of me going to therapy. Hmm. He hummed, his lips brushing against my temple. I knew he wanted to ask how it was going, how I was feeling. We had agreed that I didn't have to talk about it, but from time to time I shared small things with him. I told him about the night my mother came to me in a dream. It was relatively soon after I'd met Will, and things were going well. So well it scared me. We had a good, long mother daughter talk. Will said if I thought my mother came to me, that she must have. I wanted to think that. It gave me comfort to believe it, but my therapist helped me understand that it was more likely that my mind was telling me that it was time to move ahead. Maybe I was waiting on a sign that said I could smile again, that it was okay to be happy, that I was still here, that I could live my life. I was going to help you with dinner. I thought you were elbow deep up a chicken's ass. Will laughed into the air, his head cocked back. You like that line. Prep didn't take long at all. I just put my dry rub on the chicken and had to get it all up on the inside, too. Then I set it up on a can of beer and put it in the oven. I thought we'd have some artichokes. Wait, I blinked, confused. You did what with a beer? He smirked, his eyebrows knit together. You've never had beer can chicken? We had it all the time growing up. Dad made it on the grill, but I perfected it for the oven. I had a taste for it. Had to buy a can of beer specifically to make it. You'll like it. There's not much I don't like in the way of food if you're making it. Actually, I stretched to press my lips to his in a warm kiss. There's not much I don't like if it has anything to do with you. The feeling is very, very mutual, babe. Coco trotted down the hall and leapt onto the couch into Will's lap. She loved me, but she loved Will, and she was a little jealous. She was a jealous little dog. She managed to make her way into the room if she heard the slightest hint of a kiss, including your dog. I told her she was a brat. She lifted her and set her onto the couch, then tapped my hip. You can help me with the vegetables, though. We need to chop and slice. I think we can call beer can chicken a hit. Will's eyes dropped to my plate, which held a leg and a thigh bone that had been picked clean, remnants of steamed artichokes with hollandaise sauce, and scant evidence that I'd been served a generous helping of roasted broccoli cauliflower mix. You think? Did you leave anything on the bone, babe? Nope. And I ate all of my vegetables. That you did. I'm pretty proud that I make vegetables that you'll eat. Will started to get up, reaching for my plate. I playfully slapped his hand. I'll get the dishes. You know what this is. You cook, I clean. But you help cooked. I chopped broccoli and cauliflower, Will. Hardly an effort at all. You did the heavy lifting. Sit. I grabbed his plate and mine, shoveling what was left of our dinner plates into the garbage compactor, then placed the plates and silverware in the dishwasher. Will was a neat cook. He washed as he went, putting away spices and utensils after he used them. I didn't mind cleaning up after him when he hardly made a mess at all. The nights that I cooked, well, I tried. Will didn't complain when he had to clean up after me. In a few minutes, I had put away the leftovers, put the rest of the dishes in the dishwasher, wiped down the counters and stove, and swept the floor. The dishwasher hummed quietly. Will was in the living room where he lounged with his feet up on the ottoman, flipping through the new issue of the Financial Times. Coco was perched in his lap like a queen on her throne. Someone's comfortable, I commented, scratching her behind the ear. I think I'm going to run myself a bubble bath and relax, read a little. You sure? I'm sure. Faith dragged me to 9 stores today. 9. I'm a little sore. Maybe later on we can, stretch. I gave Will a wink, then laughed because he was the one always winking at me. I can definitely stretch some things for you. Will grinned, his tongue swiping his bottom lip as he gave my backside a tap. Go. Enjoy your bath. I'll meet you in bed. I must have been tired. 1 minute I was sinking into a piping hot, bubbly, jasmine scented bath and resting my neck on a rolled up terry cloth towel. The last thing I remembered thinking was how peaceful and happy I'd been lately. Unbelievably happy. But instead of being afraid that it was going to be taken from me, I was excited. I sensed something. Something on the horizon. I remembered sinking into the tub, my mind on those happy, expectant thoughts. The next moment, Will was bent over me, shaking me awake. You're gonna get all pruny and wrinkly. And not that I wouldn't still love you, but I don't want you to get all pruny and wrinkly. I sat up, yawning and stretching my limbs, then smiled as I watched Will pull the plug in the tub and grab a fresh bath sheet from a stack in the linen closet. He opened it and stepped back, waiting for me to get out of the tub, then wrapped it around me. Come on, Sleepy. Let's see if we can get in some stretches before you fall asleep on me. That nap might that nap might be just what I needed, you know. I laid across the bed on my stomach. Will and I had a funny little ritual where he liked to apply my body butter after a bath. I don't feel all that sleepy right now. Is that right? I felt Will's weight on the bed and then his lips skittering across my skin. Goosebumps rose in waves. Chapter 8. I clung to Will, my arms wrapped tightly around him, my legs locked around his torso. The steady thumps of the bed against the wall and the matching rhythmic sound of skin against skin was heady and erotic. I needed to climax, but I also didn't want him to ever stop. His body writhed with long, hard strokes until I couldn't take it anymore. My back arched as I convulsed, and I let out a peal of loud, pleasured moans. A few moments later, his voice chorused with mine. I panted into the air, trying to catch my breath. Will had collapsed on top of me, still inside me, his mouth laying little suction kisses on whatever skin he could get to. When he attempted to pull out and roll away, I gripped him with my legs so he couldn't move. Are you trying to tell me something? Yeah, don't move. I might be in the mood for some more in a minute. He chuckled. You're gonna wear me out. Or is that the point? Nah, I answered, then finished with a snort. Just taking advantage of this new broom situation. My pleasure, then. Deciding that he wasn't going to be able to move any time soon, he settled his body weight onto mine and bent his head to kiss me. I love you, Saida. Way more than I ever thought I could love a person. An eyebrow lifted. More than Coco, even? More than Coco, even. I'm sure she's real upset about that, too. As if on cue, I heard a light scratch at the door and the whine of a spoiled Bichon Frise on the other side of the bedroom door. If we didn't lock her out, sex was interesting. I love you too, Will, I murmured softly, stretching up to kiss him, even if I have to compete with the dog. He moaned through another kiss, then rested his forehead against mine. Pensive, he opened his mouth, then closed it. What? I prodded. I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been kind of, well, waiting until I felt like the time was right. Oh? I unlocked my legs and started to sit up. This sounded serious, not a conversation one should have while intimately joined. Will sat up, then flipped the comforter back, the warmth of the room making short work of the sweat glistening on his body. I'll be right back. He hopped out of bed and headed for the bathroom, coming back moments later to slip into his side of the bed. I sat up on my side, rod straight. Something about this serious tone he'd used put me on edge. Don't try to let me down easy. Just say whatever it is. Babe, relax. It's not anything bad. We're okay. The sigh of relief that I let out was so loud it made him laugh. Then he felt bad about laughing, so he rolled his lips inward and tried to bring his face to a neutral expression. I, we've talked for the past few months about things we wanted to accomplish either on our own or together. It's been a great year, hasn't it? I nodded in agreement. The year had been great. I had taken on a new role at school, Outside of the children I usually worked with, I now had a small, dedicated group of students for one on one study and guidance. It meant more work, but I found it extremely rewarding to see them grow with just a little bit of attention. And over the summer, I had been placed in charge of coordinating volunteers at the children's nursery. I still went in to read to them, but now I could encourage others to do the same. The business has grown so much in the last year, Will was saying. That Panola Road project put us on the map. I've become a much better salesman. We've got projects going nonstop. We've had to hire a few people, subcontract some others, and I moved in with a beautiful woman that I fell in love with. He smiled, glancing at me like I could miss a bit of that sucking up. I feel like I'm in a place where, well, I'm happy, but I'm looking forward to more. I want more, and I want more with you, and I guess I wanted to get a pulse check, see how you're feeling about things, about us, about life in general. Life in general. I almost laughed aloud. Life in general was like night and day since I'd met him almost a year to the day ago. He called the next day, just like he promised he would. He took me to a speakeasy. It happened to be a spoken word night, so we listened to authors and poets read their work for the small but lively crowd. We had drinks and talked, and then went for coffee and dessert and talked. And when I'd called him to let him know I got home safely, we ended up talking most of the night. When I thought I was all talked out, that this man couldn't possibly find anything interesting about this broken woman he'd met on Christmas Day, he'd call and we'd talk more. About everything. About nothing. About important things. About stupid things. Before I knew it, a few months had gone by and I was falling in love. And terrified about it. The fear was irrational and I knew it, but I couldn't help it. I'd lost people I'd loved. I didn't think I could take it if something happened, and I lost him too. I almost pushed him away. Almost. Instead, I picked up a phone and made an appointment. Therapy was rough at first. The hardest thing I have ever had to do. Baring my soul, exposing my vulnerabilities felt impossible. That wall I'd built around myself, around my heart, I was so afraid to tear it down. And I had so much guilt to work through about the accident, about living after my parents were gone. After I got used to talking to Dr. Sawyer, it got easier. It wasn't like I was cured or healed overnight, but I didn't cut things off with Will. The thing I was most afraid of, losing him, didn't happen. Our relationship got better and better. I knew what he was asking, though. Was I still scared? Did I still want to take things impossibly slow so I didn't get hurt? Was I far enough along in my progress to see past the next few days, the next few weeks, the next few months with him? And the big question, was I ready to risk my heart again, to commit to taking vows seriously, for better or worse, richer or poorer? I reached out to him, placing my hands on his chest, pushing until he was on his back, shoulders pressed against the mattress. Then I hiked a leg over him and straddled his waist. I think that life in general is pretty damned amazing, thanks in some part to you. My life is completely different than it had been for a long time. I'm grateful to be where I am, where we are. I'm right where I want to be, Will. If it's okay with you, I want to stay here forever. His hands roved my body around the curve of each generous cheek before moving to the junction of my thighs. The tip of a finger dipped into my core, collecting wetness before circling and stroking, stirring me up again. That's fine with me, he mumbled, his eyes flicking up to mine. I bent to capture his lips in a long, slow, sensuous kiss while his fingers worked their magic. That's just fine with me. Chapter 9. Ready for this? Will put the car in park and glanced over at me. He smiled, except his smile was devilish and made me laugh. He knew I was nervous and already had one foot out of the door. I was ready to bolt if Jay was the slightest bit disagreeable. I guess. Do we need to set up a signal so if something happens and we have to leave, you'll know? How about you just say let's go and we'll walk out? I sucked my teeth, then gathered the straps of my purse. Smart ass. He's not ruining 2 holidays in a row. He didn't ruin last year, though, said Will, leaning over the armrest to nip my ear. Not for me, and not completely for you, right? right? But you know what I mean. Yes, I know what you mean. I've got your back. I'm not afraid to knock a sucker out for disrespecting my woman, even if he is my brother. He reached for the door latch, saying, "Let's go in. We're already late." Whose fault is that? Well, it wasn't my idea to spend the whole morning in bed. Oh, yeah, I guess that is my fault. I leaned over to kiss him, my lips lingering on a moment longer than usual. I had wanted this year to begin the exact opposite of how last year began. No sadness, no melancholy, no dearth of holiday joy and gratefulness for all that had come to me throughout the year. And I wanted to take advantage of having someone with me to ring in the season. Mission accomplished. I got out, then waited for Will to grab the wine and gifts from the back seat and meet me in front of the car. Then I tucked my arm into his and we walked up the driveway and the front walk. The bright red door swung open as soon as we reached the landing. Anthony stood in the opening, Avery perched on his hip in a pretty bright red dress and white stockings. "Merry Christmas," he called out, offering his free hand to Will to shake, then wrapped the same arm around my shoulder as I passed him into the house. "If this dinner sucks," he muttered in my ear, "we're all running away." I laughed, giving little Avery's leg a tug as I followed Will inside. As was customary, Faith had transformed the house into a winter wonderland. The tree was just as grand as it had been the year before, except this year the motif was a soft, dusty rose, a deep midnight blue, and silver accents. Will bent to slide a few boxes under the tree, then took the wine over to the bar and set it inside the silver bowl full of ice. He turned, pulling down the hem of his new cashmere sweater just in time to come face to face with his brother Jay. They worked together, of course, but I hadn't been in the same room with Jay more than a few times since last year. My pride was still hurt. I still smarted from the things he'd said. To me, I was a believer that alcohol didn't invent thoughts and feelings. Rather, it removed the filter that kept them at bay in polite company. We were supposed to be fully grown, mature adults, older and wiser, but he'd resorted to childish name calling and insults. He had never apologized. I decided not to hold my breath waiting for it. "Hey man," Will said in greeting. They shook hands, then gave each other manly slaps on the back. "Looking good. Where's the missus?" "In the kitchen, with Faith, getting pointers on how to make prime rib, like she actually cooks." Jay turned to me, and his eyes lit up. He and Will were so close in resemblance that they could be twins, but while he was a handsome, tall, muscular specimen of a man, my heart didn't skip beats and my hands weren't clammy and I wasn't nervous when I saw him. It's amazing what being in love can show you. "Saida," he said, his greeting to me the warmest it had ever been. He leaned over to drop a dry kiss on my cheek. "You look beautiful. My brother is a very lucky man." He thrummed over at Will, who beamed a knowing smile in my direction. "You would know," I thought. Out loud, I said, "Thank you, Jay. Merry Christmas." "Thanks. You too." He clapped his hands together, then rubbed his palms against one another. "Well, here we are again. It's a little strange to be here again after last year." "Let's let last year be last year, and let's move away from the bar," Will suggested. "I'm okay," he insisted, but his gaze had already settled on the bottles. Will wrapped an arm around his shoulder and walked him away. I exhaled a long, loud breath and left Will and Jay to themselves, headed for the kitchen. Faith and Jay's wife were in deep conversation over prime rib, sitting beautifully on a serving platter. I just mixed together a few ingredients. Less is more, you know. "Do you just make it up, or do you use a recipe?" "Truth be told," Faith said in hushed tones, "I use Alton Brown's horseradish cream recipe. It's really good, and I don't feel the need to improve on it." Celeste nodded, her perfectly arched brows angled closely together in conversation. I'd first met Celeste, thin, tall, model gorgeous, lightly toasted cinnamon skin tone Celeste at Faith and Anthony's wedding. If the daggers she shot in my direction throughout the wedding and reception were any indication, she knew about our brief relationship and wasn't pleased to even be sharing the same air with me. These days, I could tell she tried not to let it bother her. I was with her brother in law and visibly happy, but depending on how the reconciliation was going, some days and some encounters were better than others. I prayed tonight's dinner would be one of the better ones. Faith really deserved to not have two ruined Christmases. and I had absolutely no desire to take her man. She could keep that rude son of a. It smells so good in here, I commented, bending to sniff a deep whiff of grade A beef roasted to perfection. I knew Faith had put her foot in this meal, and I was looking forward to enjoying it. Oh, said Celeste, her bird like mouth painted in a bright red lipstick pursed in a tight, tense bow. She backed up a step or two and folded her thin arms across her chest. You were here. Thinking about Jay's subtle dig at her a few moments ago and her reaction to me, I gathered that things weren't going well between them. I'm here, I confirmed, giving her the brightest smile I could muster. Merry Christmas! Will brought in gifts for you and Jay. They're under the tree. Celeste didn't respond, save an eye roll she thought I didn't see. Saida! Faith's face, Faith's face lit up, and her arms closed around my shoulders in a tight hug, like we never saw each other. Thank God you're here, she mumbled in my ear. Please don't leave me alone with these miserable people. I almost laughed aloud, but caught it before my giggle could spill over. I guess I'd made a reputation for myself as a person that would, most certainly, leave a room if I wasn't satisfied. I'm here for the duration, I assured her, then stepped back, surveying the room. Food covered every surface, delicious smelling, great looking food. Tell me what to do. Put me to work. I'm ready to eat. Okay, grab a dish and set it out on the buffet. Saida, you know how I like it. Main dish in the middle, veggies on the right, carbs on the left. I grabbed a dish, then walked past Celeste to start arranging dinner on the buffet. When I walked back into the kitchen, she was still standing there, her arms still crossed. Chop, chop, princess. We all work around here. Grab a dish so we can eat. Celeste huffed, flipped her blonde weave behind her shoulder, and reached for the smallest dish she could find. I wanted to laugh. Uproariously, Jay Hunter got exactly who he deserved. On my way out of the room, I gave in and let out a loud chuckle. What's so funny, baby? Will asked. I'll tell you later, I whispered, dropping an obviously loud smooch on his lips, then heading back to the kitchen. I passed Jay, grinning like a fool, and betting he was watching me walk away. During dinner, Way During dinner, Will, Anthony, and Jay were wrapped up in a sports conversation, something about which quarterback on which team they'd switch out for Colin Kaepernick. Faith, Celeste, and I chatted about after Christmas sales and Real Housewives of Atlanta, while Faith tried to keep an eye on the girls in their booster seats and Christmas dresses. I tried not to have a drink since I felt it was rude to pour up while Jay was still going through his steps. He had stopped drinking on New Year's Day and had diligently been working to repair his life, including his marriage. The jury was still out on that, but I didn't want to do anything to harm his progress. Jay insisted that everyone enjoy themselves, so I sipped on a glass of wine while I took a break from stuffing myself silly. Honestly, I couldn't wait until Will and I could get home, get comfortable, and have a drink together. I grinned to myself at the thought of home, my cozy little condo that I shared with the man I loved, and his dog. Saida, Anthony called from his end of the table. It's great that you made it to our table 2 years in a row. Maybe it'll be a new tradition. I shrugged, quietly brushing off the question. Will and I had that brief conversation a few nights ago, but a question hadn't been asked. I had no doubt that it would be, but until it was, I couldn't speak for my future Christmases. Next to me, Will dropped an arm from the back of my chair to rub my shoulder. Or, he replied, maybe we'll have our own traditions. My bad, man. Anthony sat back in his seat and pushed his nearly empty plate away, then reached for the glass of bourbon he'd been drinking. I didn't know things were serious like that. Yeah, Will nodded, his eyes meeting mine. Things are serious like that. The sparkle in those brown eyes was so impish. He had something up his sleeve. Before I could ask what was up, he scooted his chair back from the table and stood. I had planned this for later, but serendipity, I guess. If we could just all, I don't know, take a break from dinner and, Saida. He reached for me, his hand outstretched for mine. Join me at the tree. Chairs slightly scraped from the wood floors as everyone pushed back from the table and migrated from the dining room to the living room, where they spread out among the couches and chairs. Will and I stood in front of the beautifully lit Christmas tree. Will grabbed my hand and held it in his. I noticed then that his palm was clammy, and he was trembling. I gave him a squeeze and tried to catch his eye as he pulled me close. So, like I said, I'd planned this for later, maybe after dessert when everyone's full and comfortable, but Anthony had to go and open his big mouth about traditions, and, well, he chuckled, a nervous half smile. If you don't mind, before you start planning for Saida to be at your table every year, I thought I'd ask if she'd mind being at mine. He paused, turning to face me, then gripped both of my hands in his. My heartbeat sped up, wildly thumping. I was sure the room could hear it pounding out of my chest. Everything seemed to be happening at lightning speed, but in slow motion at the same time. Like I couldn't keep up, but I wanted to rush past this moment to the big moment. You know how you just know things? Like you always knew you wanted to be a teacher. You never had to wait to decide you wanted to teach, you just knew. That's the same way I knew when I met you that you were the one for me. That's the same way I knew I was in love with you. And it's the same way that I know that, um. Released my hands and sank to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. When he popped the lid up, I almost couldn't see the ring nestled inside for the tears in my eyes. My head whipped around to Faith, who was trying and failing to keep a straight face. It was impossible that she didn't know about Will's plans, considering the cushion ruby halo engagement ring was exactly something I'd fawn over, then lament that I didn't have someone to present me one. And she'd tell me to keep the faith, hang in there, there's someone out there just for me. I used to think that was something she'd said in automatic response. Then I met Will. As I was saying, it's the same way I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So I think I know the answer, but I'm nervous anyway. I'm still asking though. Saida Harlan, would you do me the honor of being my wife? I nodded, my head bobbing viciously since I was crying so hard I couldn't speak. Will pulled the ring from the box and slipped it onto my finger. It fit snug and it was gorgeous, sparkling in the lights and against my skin. I grabbed his forearms and pulled until he was standing, then fell into his arms. I love you, he said, his lips so close to my ear I felt his breath on my skin. I wish your parents could have been here, but I have a feeling they're watching over you and they're happy. Yeah, I answered, sighing happily, my arms still tight around his shoulders. I think they are. They would love you, Will. Absolutely love you, just like I do. And just like that, my Christmases for the next forever were locked in. Chapter 10. Thanks for having us, I told Faith while she helped me pull on my coat. It was chillier this year than last year, which I loved because we could turn on the fireplace and sit together with Coco between us and watch a movie. I was looking forward to doing that exact thing as soon as we got home. Those leftovers will not last long. Will is primed for a midnight sandwich. He might not be hungry again by midnight the way he ate today. I love a man that appreciates good food. Me too, especially that one. I looked back at Will, who was giving Anthony a hearty handshake with one hand, balancing the containers of leftovers with the other. He was guarding them like military secrets. My gaze returned to Faith. Her expression softened as she smiled. Enjoy it, Saida. He loves you more than anything, and you deserve all of that love. Let him show it. All the way through that vacation in Jamaica. I knew you couldn't hold back your saltiness, I smirked, then plopped a kiss on her cheek. Thanks for your help. I know you were a huge part in orchestrating today. She nodded. It was the only reason I would let Jay back on my house. I'm happy for you, honey. You deserve a happily ever after, and besides, she said, leaning in so only I could hear her, how awesome is it that Jay had to watch you get engaged to his brother while he sits next to a woman that only came back to him because his business turned around? Her eyebrows did a little dance when she pulled back. Then we burst into laughter. That's the most awesome part. I'll let you know we made it to Jamaica. Our flight tomorrow is crazy early. You don't worry about me at all. Just let that man spoil you and enjoy yourself. I hope you find what you need there. We ready? Will asked, coming up beside me. Coco was probably doing the potty dance. I slipped my hand into Will's and nodded. Pretty sure I already found what I need. Thank you for today. Oh no, baby, thank you for today. I've never been so nervous in my life. We'd come home and changed clothes and were comfortably perched on the couch with the dog and some spiked hot chocolate and a few slices of Faith's pound cake. The fireplace was lit, and so was the tree and all of the lights and the angels, too. My condo was so festive, it was ridiculous. There was no need to be nervous. I knew just like you did. I just needed a little time, was all. What a difference a year makes, right? I only came to dinner to make sure my brother didn't drive into a tree, and I only came to dinner because Faith tricked me, and all it took was me and you being in the same room. Do you believe in fate? Or destiny? Hmm, Will mused, then dipped his head to brush his lips across mine. I didn't used to. I'm a pretty logical person, but I think I have to now. Me too, baby, me too. I know I put you on the spot in front of your friends, my family. You're welcome to back out. I lifted my left hand, gazing at my ring and how it sparkled so brightly in the lights from the tree. You'll pry this ring from my cold, dead hands, Will Hunter. I love you. I'm marrying you. I'm having your babies, and we will be happy for the rest of our lives. Got it? Got it, he said, laughing. And this trip to Jamaica, are you going to be okay? Yeah, I'll be great. In fact, I was thinking. I twisted in his arm so I could face him and grabbed one of his hands. Let's treat this as a prelude to a honeymoon, a celebration. I don't want to think about their last vacation or see where they took their last photo. I'm done with all of that sadness, with keeping things inside me because I feel guilty about being happy, being so stupid in love. I want to celebrate us in the same place they celebrated. That's it. Will nodded slowly, letting me know he'd been thinking the same thing. My brother is still an asshole, even when he's sober. I groaned. AA was helping, but I still couldn't believe I ever fell for him. But if it wasn't for him, we would have never met, and I never would have had the chance to be this happy. I picked up our glasses and handed Will's to him, then clinked mine against his in a toast. Here's to finding completely unexpected love and happiness for the rest of our lives. The end. Phew, I made it through that with only a few flubs. I was actually able to edit out a few of those, but I'm not well versed enough in editing to get everything. I hope it didn't take away from your enjoyment of that little ditty. That's probably one of my favorites of my holiday shorts, simply because it's super sappy and it's very, very happy and lovey dovey. I hope you will stick around for my next holiday short. That one is called Second Time Around. And I will conclude with the Kwanzaa brunch, which is really, really fun. And you will see Will and Saida, as well as Faith and Anthony, come back in that one. So thanks for sticking with me through my inaugural bookcast episode. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks.